Sanbonani Ekurhini, my name is Gilebohile Mutlomedi, and welcome to another episode of EkuPodcast. Today we're talking about food hygiene and food safety. In studio today at the Knowledge Center at the Jameson Library, we've got environmental health practitioner, Mr. Prince Molepo, who's the city's environmental health practitioner. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
So when we talk about food safety and environmental health practitioner, what is the link there?
I think maybe I should start by explaining what food safety is.
Okay.
In layman's terms, food safety is a practice or an action that aims to entail that food from the source. We usually talk about farm to fork. So this is a process where we take to ensure that food from all these processes that are undertaken within the food manufacturing industries until the food reaches the market is deemed to be safe, free from any harm, free from any contaminants, and fit for human consumption. So in our environmental health division, we've got systems as well that entail or links these premises to food safety. We've got what we call a certificate of acceptability. This is a certificate that we assign to premises that have met our regulation that we use, which is R638, regulation related to the hygiene requirements for premises, food premises, transport of food, as well as related matters.
So let's talk about the certificate of acceptability. Is it issued to any outlet or premises that's handling food?
I'm glad you spoke about the word handling. When it comes to handling is any process from the start to the end. I'll just give you an example. When we talk about food handling, it includes storage, warehousing. It can also be processing, can be the preparation of the food, the display of the food, and the ultimate sale. So anybody within the bounds of South Africa that is handling food by law is required to have a certificate of acceptability. This certificate of acceptability can be issued to any food premises, whether you are a spaza, whether you are an informal hawker, or a food industry that is maybe your big industries or your big franchises. The only issue is you have to comply to Section 5 and Section 6, which are requirements related to the premises itself and the facilities within those premises. The basis of our regulation, fortunately, is one whereby we use the best available method approach, meaning that everybody's got the proficiency or the ability to, what word I could use, I'd rather say, to comply. It makes it easy, but then the basis of it is to make sure that ultimately you comply. You are given up to 6 months from the moment you start to apply, and provided there's no conditions within your premises that might compel us to prohibit your activity, you've got that 6 months whereby you are allowed to gradually get yourself compliant, with the assistance of our constant monitoring from environmental health, whereby we monitor these premises once every 3 months.
So are you also telling me that Umamoteng Samakunyara corner is also supposed to have a certificate of acceptability?
Fortunately, the answer is yes. We try to find ways whereby we get them to comply to this regulation. I'll give you just a normal example, whereby the requirements would say you need to have access to running water, or access to clean potable water. We could allow you to have a receptacle, which is a container, as long as you can make it a point that the source of the contents of that container is from a potable source. City of Ekurhuleni, of course, we supply water that is compliant to SANS 241, which is a standard linked to the safety of potable water. So if they can assure us that they have sourced the water from a potable source, and a source that is classified to have met SANS 241, of course, we allow them to use that, provided they can also supply to us where they're going to dispose of that water, because their activity should not create any other after effects that might end up contaminating the food or the activities within that food premises.
And is this certificate issued once off, or I need to come back and renew it? What's the process there?
The issue of a certificate of acceptability, it depends on the premises itself. When we issue it, it's supposed to be a once-off, provided that you uphold the standards or the requirements contained within our regulation. So as we undertake our day-to-day monitoring of these food premises, of course, we do sometimes come across situations or conditions that might compel us to prohibit a certain activity. For instance, if you are given a certificate to maybe prepare amagwenya, if on the day of my inspection I find that maybe there might be some contamination or practices that are not in line with the expectations from our regulations, I might compel you or I might prohibit that activity, meaning for that time whereby that condition still remains on the premises, you're not allowed to undertake that activity. So for that day, or until you remove the process that I've identified that might affect the food stuff, you will not undertake that activity. You might sell other things, but you will not prepare food.
And how would I know as a consumer that the place I'm buying from is certified?
By law, any premises that has been issued with a certificate of acceptability needs to display it in a conspicuous space where it can be seen. In a case whereby it cannot be displayed, sometimes these premises would have brands alignment that would not sit well with our certificate, and then they would want to maybe produce it on request. You are allowed to request it, and by law they need to produce it if you request it.
And how would I know that the place I'm buying from is compliant as a consumer?
The only direct link to compliance is that certificate, and then it is a proof that that premises has been inspected. It meets all our minimum requirements in terms of the safe handling of food, and then you can rest assured that over and above them meeting the requirements of Section 5 and Section 6, they also uphold good food handling practices that might support the production of a foodstuff that is fit for human consumption.
All right, so let's go to the issues around the dates that we see on our food. There's the BB, best before, sell by date. What does all of that mean?
I think to better unpack them, I'll need to maybe start with the best before date. The best before date, it is well known as a date of minimum durability. The date of minimum durability, it says it's a guarantee by which the manufacturer itself guarantees the product to meet a certain elements or certain deliverables in terms of how it might appear. We call them transit deliverables, whereby if the manufacturer promises the product to be a certain way, they declare that within that period, that food stuff would uphold and keep those promised elements. But what it means, it does not mean that the food might not be safe once it has gone beyond. What it means, it's a quality aspect that says if the manufacturer says this product will be thick, thick custard, it might not be as thick. It might change color, it might change texture, but it will still be safe to consume well beyond that date. The difference with best before date and use by date. Best before date, we usually link them with products that have got long shelf lives. With use by dates, we usually link them to usually perishable food items, prepared food stuff that have got short shelf life. What it means, after the date, it might not be marketable. Usually it will be advised to remove them from the shelf, but it may still have a reasonable date whereby you'll be able to consume it. Usually it will be 7 days, 3 days, 4 days, you understand? But then because there's no guideline, the manufacturer themselves, they would need to list that and then bind themselves to those guidelines to say, if I say beyond this date, once you buy it, you can only use it within the next 3 days. But then provided that food stuff is also stored according to the directions that are assigned on those food products. One of the biggest problems is we tend to not follow those directives. Even when a food item has got a best before date well beyond, if you don't follow those directives in keeping those food items in line with the directed directions on how you need to store it, whether it is away from direct sunlight, dry storage, it might affect the ultimate quality and not live beyond those promised best before dates deliverables.
So, when you go to a supermarket, for example, you find items that are on sale, food items, and then you'll see a sticker that isn't red. Every time I see red, I'm like, I'm staying away. But what do I need to look for? Like in terms of, we know sometimes the items that are being sold on sales because maybe they are going to be meeting their sell by date soon. So how am I going to be empowered in knowing that actually this is the right item? Let's say it's ham.
I think let's first start by trying to educate the public in terms of what they need to look for. The sell by dates are very important because they are a good guide in terms of whether this food product you're buying would meet. So should it not be in line with what you expect or beyond? Sometimes people buy them because they have not noticed that they might be beyond. But in one of the issues that you need to look for, number one would be the certificate, because it gives you an indication that this product is sold within an environment or a premises that meets our standards. Number two would be the product themselves, whether those products have discoloration, have defects, have temperings in terms of labels. Those will be the telltale signs that would be warnings to say maybe you need to move back and relook this product again. So you're not by law allowed to sell any product that has dented containers, the products that have rusted, or that might have been maybe broken seals. Because the moment you break a seal, you give an opportunity for contaminants to get into the product, and it might actually alter how this product actually is finally.
And what power do I have? For example, if I buy cooked beans, baked beans, and I get home and I realize actually it's dented, can I go back and say, hey, hang on, it's dented? Or are they, like, what power do I now have?
Luckily in South Africa, we've got so many laws that protect not only the public, but specifically the consumer. I think under the Consumer Protection Act, although it's not a law that we enforce ourselves as environmental health, you've got the powers to return the product if it does not meet your expectations. You've got a right to demand a refund, you've got a right to demand an exchange. But also, if you're not happy, you can contact any of our offices. We've got environmental health offices in all the sub-regions, and they will be happy to go and investigate to try to distinguish whether that product might have been maybe damaged or affected by any activities within the premises, or maybe do they still uphold those requirements as per our regulation. And then based on that, we can impose or cite the premises. We can prohibit if there's any activity that might endanger the public. So there's so many ways that we can undertake in trying to protect the public. But then the public needs to make sure that they are the ears and the eyes that will advise us and direct us to the right premises.
Happiness. So even when an expiry date has been tampered with, can I visit the city's premises and offices to report that?
Yes, all consumers, especially when those food products are found. Remember, it's a criminal element. It's a criminal offense actually to tamper with any labeling, whether it is to deface or whether to tamper or to imprint a new date. It becomes a criminal element, and those activities need to be reported to our offices for us to undertake further investigations.
And are there any certain items that humans consume that are exempt from having an expiry date?
There's quite several items, and then I'll try to give examples in terms of the reason why. Number one will be certain items under the Liquor Products Act, and mostly is because of the alcohol content. It's not all liquors that are not supposed to have best before, but usually your wines and spirits and alcohol contents over the alcohol volume of 10% are exempted, because usually because of the volume content, bacteria does not find it easy to grow. I'll give you another example, chewing gum, because remember, chewing gum is synthetic. By its nature does not allow moisture to ingress. So bacteria to grow needs moisture and sunlight. So it does not allow, so it keeps well. It might change. Usually when you keep chewing gum longer than you're supposed to, it only hardens, but does not mean that it's not safe to consume. Another example would be fresh products like your vegetables and fruits. By law, because as long as they have not been peeled or processed in any way, they are not supposed to have best before dates. Vinegar, because of its acidity, and how it is made, its makeup. You can keep it for years and years. It won't alter in its format. And I think if you know how vinegar is made, it is closely related to wines. They make them from grapes. Another example would be your fresh confectionaries, and then it's only because that fresh confectionaries are actually baked with the expectation that you'll consume them within the next 24 hours. If they are on display, you don't need to put best before date. But once you're going to pack, then you need to indicate when on the label when they were packed, and as well maybe a reasonable use by date. But as long as they are on display and they're still fresh, they're not supposed to have any baked confectionaries that were made with processed sugars that have a high sugar content, because sugar does not allow bacterial growth. They are also not expected to have those dates of minimum durability.
So I just want us to go back to where we can report. You spoke about having different offices. Are these customer care areas?
Yeah, the link is to aim to have offices in all customer relations, customer care areas. But unfortunately, because of staff constraints, it's not always possible. But what I can tell you is most customer care areas have environmental health offices. I've got a list here with myself, and then if I've got the time, I would just try to list a few and maybe also indicate the numbers where they can each be contacted. I'm not sure if you give me that opportunity.
No, we'll flight them.
Okay.
And then is there an email address perhaps?
I think EkuPodcast has advanced. There's so many ways that the community can communicate with us. We've got this electronic incident management system, whereby all those incidents that are reported by the public can be flighted or linked to any office in real time, and we can respond on specific times. Usually in terms of complaints related to food, we respond within 24 hours to those premises. So based on those available platforms, there's so many ways they can come to our different offices and complain personally. They can call these respective offices, and then we'll respond based on our complaints handling procedures.
Thank you so much for such an informative interview. For the second segment of our episode, we are joined by Johan Gugemur, who's also an environmental health practitioner. Welcome, sir.
Welcome, thank you.
So Prince touched on the issues around looking at the expiry date, what consumers can look out for when they're purchasing items. But I want to delve in a bit deeper in the whole, when I get home and I've bought a tin of baked beans like I had alluded earlier, what power do I have in terms of, do I return it? What do I look out for? Are there any dangers around there? Maybe you can elaborate further on that.
Yes, certainly you are allowed, if there's something wrong with the product, you are allowed to take it back. The best, however, is before you buy the product, to look at the containers. You need to ensure that there are no dents on the container and that it's not bulging. If it's dry products, look out for discoloration. Look for the presence of insects like weevils inside the product. And if there are such products, I think the best is to bring it to the attention of the shop owner and do not buy it at all. If you take a product home, tinned foodstuffs, and you might drop it and it dents, it doesn't mean that it will definitely immediately be not safe for use. The reason why you shouldn't buy a dented foodstuff, especially when there are sharp corners, there's a shellac layer inside that protects the contents against reaction with the metal of the container. And if it's dented, that shellac layer is damaged, and then you start to get reaction between the acids in the product and the container itself. The best will be then not to buy a product that is dented. If it's blown, we also call it a hopper. To make sure that it's not started to blown, you press it at the bottom, and if it bulges at the top, you will also hear that clicking sound. Then you will also know that it's rather not safe to buy that product.
So does the same apply to a bottled item? Let's say I've got chutney and I open the cap, and when I look at it, it's got rust. what do I do then? Do moet ek skrik wees or do I just eat it?
Yeah, if you see that there's a problem, normally if you open a bottle and you hear air escaping, then there might be something wrong with the contents. As soon as there's a reaction or bacterial growth in a product, it starts to form a layer, or it starts to what is the word, Prince? It's air. It forms. There's a buildup of air, and then if you open it and you hear, or it sprays out when you open a can, then you also know that it's not fit for human consumption.
So there's so many factors involved in just handling food, not only when it comes to the market, but also we as consumers have that responsibility.
Yes, and the best is to look at the product and choose the right product before you buy it. Also, products without labels, for example, tint stuffs is supposed to have a label. Do not buy tint stuff that do not have labels. If a person wrote with a pen on there that this is baked beans, don't trust it, because you don't know what it contains, and therefore rather look for the labels.
All right, so Prince, I want to go back a little bit to the restaurants. Look at restaurants. I know they also have a certificate of acceptability. Do we actually look at the items that they are using? Do we look at the tin stuff, or there's certain regulations that stipulates what they need to do?
In terms of restaurants, I think when I spoke about handling involving all aspects from the start of the process. In a restaurant, you also would go into the storage, would also, if we've got reasons, would also request any information to justify the source of their food items that they use, or the food ingredients that they use in the establishment. So we've got those powers that would compel us to provide them proof of purchase. If maybe I doubt that some of the products might not be sourced from reputable sources, I can ask for proof from that one. So also their practices, hand hygiene is very important. Food handling practices is also very important. There's one aspect that maybe we always fail to address, especially when we find food premises storing food directly to the ground. Because of how the temperature, especially dry products, you find them sticking dry products on the ground, and whenever there's temperature changes on the ground, there'll be moisture buildup. Johan mentioned issues around weevils and presence of insects. Once those moisture build up within those dry products, it becomes a breeding point for other elements, and that's where the weevils would come in because of ingress with moisture and the likes.
I feel so safe just being around you guys and knowing that the city has environmental health practitioners on the ground who visit premises on a daily basis to ensure that the food that we consume are of satisfactory standards. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Ekurhuleni, knowledge is power. It's all in your hands. Do report any outlets that you feel might be selling items that are not of satisfactory standard. We have a team on the ground ready to safeguard you. Thank you so much. Until next time.